On April 3, 1994, at 11:47 p.m., a phone rang in a Seattle hotel room. Private investigator Tom Grant picked up. He'd been hired just days earlier to find one of the most famous musicians on the planet, Kurt Cobain. The voice on the other end was distorted, processed, genderless, and what it said made Grant's blood run cold. "I know where Kurt Cobain is. I know what's going to happen to him, and I'll tell you everything. For $50,000. Grant had been a private investigator for 15 years. He'd handled kidnappings, corporate espionage, witness protection cases, but in all those years, he had never received a call like this. Because the caller didn't just claim to know where Kurt was hiding. They claimed to know what was being planned. Stay with me. Because what this caller knew, and how they knew it, still has no explanation to this day. Let's go back to where this all started. On March 30th, 1994, Tom Grant received a call at his Beverly Hills office. It was Rosemary Carroll, an entertainment attorney representing Courtney Love. She needed a private investigator, discreet and experienced. Her client's husband had walked out of a rehabilitation facility in Marina del Rey 2 days earlier. He'd climbed a wall, left without a word, and disappeared. Her client's husband was Kurt Cobain. Grant agreed to take the case. His standard rate was $85 an hour. Carroll said that wouldn't be a problem. On March 31st, Grant flew to Seattle. Courtney had provided key details. Kurt had used his credit card to buy a plane ticket from Los Angeles to Seattle on April 1st. He'd withdrawn cash from an ATM near the airport. After that, nothing. No card activity, no contact, no trace. Grant met with Courtney at the family home on Lake Washington Boulevard. She seemed worried. She said their relationship was complicated, that Kurt needed space sometimes. She just wanted to know he was safe. Grant began his work. He called hotels. He tracked down associates. He built a timeline, piece by piece. And then the pieces started looking wrong. The taxi driver who'd picked Kurt up at the airport remembered dropping someone matching his description near the Lake Washington house. But not at the house. A few blocks away, on foot, as if he didn't want to be seen arriving. Why would a man fly home to Seattle and then deliberately avoid his own front door? Grant called Dylan Carlson, one of Kurt's closest friends. He'd been hard to reach. When Grant finally got him on the phone and asked if he'd seen Kurt recently, Carlson said no. But before hanging up, he added something that stuck. Kurt knows how to take care of himself. It wasn't what he said. It was how he said it. Calm, resigned, like someone who had already made peace with something Grant hadn't yet seen. Grant made a note. He wanted to follow up in person. But before he could arrange a meeting, his hotel phone rang. It was 11:47 p.m. on April 3rd, and everything changed. The voice was processed, robotic, stripped of any recognizable quality. It knew Grant's name. It knew he was looking for Kurt. And it opened with an offer that no legitimate informant would ever make. $50,000 for information about Kurt's location, his recent movements, and, the caller's words, what was being planned. Grant stayed calm. He grabbed a notepad. "If you have information about a missing person, you should contact the police," he said. The caller didn't pause. "The police aren't looking for Kurt Cobain. He's an adult who left treatment voluntarily. They won't act without evidence of a crime. You know that, Mr. Grant. You were law enforcement yourself." Grant's pen stopped moving. That detail, his background as a former police officer, was not public knowledge. Whoever was calling had done research. This wasn't a random opportunist. This was someone who knew who Grant was, why he was in Seattle, and what he was looking for. The caller offered one piece of information for free, a proof of legitimacy. Kurt had checked into the Marco Polo Motel on Aurora Avenue on April 1st, under the name Bill Bailey. He'd stayed 2 nights. He'd left on the morning of April 3rd. "Verify that," the caller said. "When you do, you'll understand that the rest is worth $50,000. The line went dead. Grant called the Marco Polo immediately. The night clerk confirmed it. Someone matching Kurt's description had checked in under that name on April 1st, paid cash, and left the key in the room without checking out at the desk. The caller had told the truth. Grant spent April 4th trying to trace the call. Hotel records showed it had come from a payphone near downtown Seattle. No cameras, no witnesses, A dead end. He contacted Rosemary Carroll. Should he authorize a payment? Was this a legitimate source, or was someone exploiting a family's fear during a crisis? Carroll said she'd discuss it with Courtney. In the meantime, keep investigating. That night, at exactly 9 p.m., the phone rang again. Grant answered, same distorted voice, same offer. But this time, the caller said something different. Kurt isn't safe, Mr. Grant. There are people who benefit from Kurt being gone permanently. Grant kept his voice steady. What people? What benefit? That information requires payment. But here's one more piece for free, so you understand I'm serious. Check the greenhouse above the garage at the Lake Washington house. Kurt has been there recently. Grant relayed the tip to Carroll. She sent someone to check. The greenhouse was locked. No signs of entry. No indication anyone had been inside. The caller had been accurate about the Marco Polo. Why give false information about the greenhouse? Unless the greenhouse wasn't false, unless it was early. On April 5th, Grant visited the Lake Washington property himself. Courtney was in Los Angeles. She'd given him permission to access the grounds if needed. He walked the perimeter, photographed everything, the main house, the wooded areas, the garage with the small room built above it. He stood at the greenhouse door for a long moment. It was locked, quiet, but something about the space felt significant in a way he couldn't explain. His instincts had been trained over 15 years to notice when a location mattered. He made a note and left. That evening, at 9 p.m., his phone rang for the third time. The caller's message was no longer a negotiation. It was a warning. Kurt Cobain will be found dead within the next week, and when he is, the official story will be that he killed himself. But that's not what will have actually happened. For $50,000, I can give you evidence that proves what really happened. Evidence that shows he didn't die by his own hand, but you need to decide quickly, because once he's found, certain evidence will be cleaned up and gone. Grant pressed. If you know about a planned crime, you have a legal and moral obligation to report it. The caller's response was quiet, almost tired. One person's life, Mr. Grant, Kurt Cobain, and I'm telling you, it may already be too late, but maybe if you move fast enough, you can find him before it happens, or at least find the truth after. The line went dead for the last time. On April 8th, at 6:30 a.m., Tom Grant's hotel phone rang. It was Courtney's attorney. Kurt had been found. He was dead. Inside the greenhouse above the garage at the Lake Washington house, the medical examiner's preliminary assessment: suicide by self-inflicted gunshot wound. Based on the condition of the body, he had likely been dead since approximately April 5th. April 5th. The same day the anonymous caller had told Grant that Kurt Cobain would be found dead within the week, and the location, the greenhouse that Carroll's contact had checked and found locked and empty on April 4th, was exactly where he was found 4 days later. The anonymous caller never contacted Grant again. The $50,000 offer vanished with them. Grant traced every call. Different payphones across Seattle, no cameras, no prints, no leads. He filed a full report. He documented every call, every tip, every timestamp. He recommended that Seattle PD investigate the anonymous contact's specific knowledge of the location and timeline. The department reviewed the case. Their conclusion: likely opportunistic extortion. Someone had used a family's fear to try to extract money. The calls were never linked to Kurt's death, but Tom Grant never stopped asking the same question. How did the caller know about the greenhouse on April 4th, 4 days before Kurt's body was found there? How did they know, on April 5th, that Kurt would be found dead within the week? And how did they know, before the first call was ever made, that the man looking for Kurt Cobain had once been a police officer? In 15 years as an investigator, Grant said in a 1997 interview, he had dealt with hundreds of informants and anonymous tips. The Marco Polo detail was accurate. The greenhouse detail was accurate. The timeline prediction was accurate. That pattern, he said, was not typical of an opportunistic scammer. It was typical of someone who already knew. The identity of the caller has never been established. The case remains officially closed. Kurt Cobain's cause of death remains suicide, as determined by the King County Medical Examiner. But the question Tom Grant has carried for 30 years is still unanswered. Who called? What did they know? And why did they know it 3 days before anyone else did? Note, this video presents a factual account of Tom Grant's documented investigation. Dialogue has been reconstructed for narrative clarity. Kurt Cobain's official cause of death remains suicide, as determined by the King County Medical Examiner. This content is intended for educational purposes only.